Content over everything.
Yeah, that's yeah. Come on my channel sometime, man, if you want to chat.
No, you've got a good mind, man.
Cool.
Inquisitive mind.
Yeah, thank you.
Don't lose track easy as well, you get me?
Yeah.
Like that.
Cool, man.
Alright,
Cool.
man like Ralph. What am I saying? The last conversation I saw you and...
Good afternoon, Leon. God bless you. I hope you're well this afternoon.
What's the name you go by now?
Yeah. My name's Abdi Kwani. My YouTube channel is Systematic365. So log on to that channel, and hopefully I'm gonna get more content.
What's it called?
Systematic365. That's like my alias.
Systematic365.
That's my alias YouTube name, but my real name's Abdi Kwani.
And I list in the building.
Hail Lister.
Come in.
Hail Lister.
Listen, I'm asking about some of the apparent inconsistencies that we notice of Ralph.
So for all our boys there, Leon is going to give me a little interrogation.
Just aiming to get clarity,
truth,
and truth to be more apparent for all who may bear witness. That's what we want, right?
Boom!
That's what we want. So he was having an interesting conversation with Abdi.
Yeah.
We were having an interesting conversation with Abdi last week. I watched the replay. I wasn't there live. If I was there live, I would have made sure the camera stayed, especially after when Ralph left and you asked the white man to speak for himself.
Yeah, definitely.
To see if he shares his opinion. But one thing that was interesting to me is when he was explaining how you intend to bring about a situation where we can have open and frank, honest discussions about some of the issues regarding race or similar topics that we currently are not able to have.
Correct.
Because
censorship of the left.
Being accused of being called a racist.
Correct. So like Lister will make videos about you. So,
So you said your method was to desensitize people from words like nigger and paki.
Absolutely.
By using them.
As satire.
You didn't really explain the content as satire.
So if you look at satire as a form of intellectual pursuit, so satire has been used throughout the centuries across the Enlightenment, usually using traditionally things like animals to characterize people as symbols and use those symbols to show the absurdity. It was used to challenge the powerful. It was used to challenge the emperors, right? It was used to say, look, I can use ridicule and mocking you as a way of bringing out issues.
Ralph, let me get you up to where exactly I want to continue. After you replied that you seem to be very intellectual yourself, so you're in comparison to general people that we've discussed with, I would say that's take how you want it. I'm just trying to be observant. So you could grasp the concept and see the value in what you understand.
Absolutely.
Whereas,
so let me give you an example.
No. Wait.
Take it.
Wait. I know you like to say this, finishing my thoughts.
I
don't want you to do that in this. You can finish them in your mind, but so people that are listening can understand exactly what I'm trying to get at.
Take your time.
So generally, the general people, they might not go as deep in their understanding of what you're trying to do. They might interpret what you're saying as, let's go around calling people nigger and paki, so we can, so we won't be called racist and we can just talk about whatever. They might not want to have intellectual conversations further than just wanting to express nigger and paki. So basically what I'm saying is, even though your ambition is to bring about a reality where we can have these conversations that need to be had, what actually might happen is a return to when we first came over and the Windrush and stuff like that, where people just expressing themselves with the impression, with the intent of expressing their resentment for other people and using these words just a means of expressing their resentment. It could be anything. Don't have to be nigger. They just want to let people know that they don't like it. Yeah. And then as a result, violence ensues. So this seems like it will be the more likely reality outcome that will come about as a result of everybody that's calling each other bad names. So I don't know what you say to that.
Let me answer this way. So, because we have the left and Antifa present here. So when I referenced earlier a while ago Eric Gans, who I was lucky to have seen at Stanford and down at UCLA, when you look at the history of words and speech, how did they come about? So they're actually right. We understand through generative anthropology that language itself is linked to the way the mind is wired up and went through 3 stages of evolution. From that, there was first the ostensive form of language, where the chimps, so imagine a time between 5 million years ago and our lost form of being humans, where we did not speak. Now, romantically imagine the originary scene where we first spoke. What was the boundary between those who did not speak and those that spoke? And I went through 3 phases where we mimetically wired our brain. The first time was we spoke by pointing. I said, Eventually, we gave people orders: sit, up, come, fight, beat. And then finally, we got to what's called declarative language, like the sky is blue or Muhammad is not a prophet. I mean, we can make statements about the world at large. But how did, I'm answering your question, how do we get that speech? What happened to the chimps? What happened with speech? In that original scene, we would have come across with a bunch of chimps and seen something we competed over. It could have been a mate, it could have been a resource, like a piece of food. And the first thing we would have done is the betas would have gone up the hierarchy and fought for the right to eat or the right to mate. And that fighting would have gone up and up and up until suddenly there would have been violence, would have finished, exhausted itself, and at one point there was the originary gesture. The first sign, so the first sign to stop fighting. So the first sign to stop fighting, stop fighting and start talking. Yeah, so the language came about stages 1, 2, 3, pointing, instructing, and looking. And the chimp started by fighting, attacking, and then talking to stop fighting. Speaking as a substitute for violence. Back to answer your question in that framework of the use of the word nigger or khaki in free speech. What is it meant to be? It's meant to be an offensive word, a sound, that is meant to be met with either violence or no violence. So what is the ultimate stage of evolution is no violence from speech. And to answer your question, what if some people just use that speech to perform violence, right? That's the idea. Correct. So now the question then becomes, what is the resolution of that conflict? How does that gesture, speech, and violence achieve peace? It achieves peace by removing speech from violence and negotiating that peace through words, right? So if you say this word cannot be said, then the rule should be no one says the word. You can't just say some people can say the word. Either no one says it, and let's say we agree no one uses the word or everyone uses the word. What's wrong with the camp no one uses the word? You're book burned. You've told all the humans not to think a thought or say a word. You've performed book burning. What if everyone says the word? You've made an equalitarian, you've diffused the power of the word. The word has been diffused upon everyone. Right now, the left wing have used the word to say everyone can be racist except white people. Only white people are not allowed to be racist. Right? This is the problem. So I intend to destroy that by making casual racism fun again. Right? Because either white people can use the word or no one can use the word. Now, would you go into the camp that says no one should use the word? Okay, peace.
I don't necessarily agree that those are the only options.
What are the? Give me some more.
And also, alright, cool. Nigger is just a word. It's just a sound that your mouth makes.
Absolutely.
It's got an intended purpose behind it. But as I said, if it's somebody's intention to cause harm or to cause violence to come about, I believe that this is what should be addressed rather than what words, what method they're using to bring that about.
Yeah.
And this is the this is what we should be challenging. This is the idea that we should be challenging in terms of what is it that makes a person want to carry out violence or make violence come about.
And now if you look at it, if you look at the legal structure, because the law is very important, what does the law say? And there's only 2 grades. There's absolute free speech, and then in Western jurisprudence, there's free speech with the clause exception, incitement to violence. So I told all these people right now to kill you, right now, I'm inciting all of them, going kill him, kill him, kill him. I'm inciting violence, and that's the only legal right in the law for me to be culpable of a crime. So the Western justice, over centuries of evolving thinking, have said that's the only soft line amongst the free speech absolute. So if I went down the street with 10 guys going, here's a black guy, nigger, 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 let's hang him up, I should be guilty by my words under the law of incitement to violence. I can go to prison for it.
Would you say your words? Would you say that your words saying New Zealand was target practice? Would you say that is an incitement to violence?
No.
Why not?
Because who am I? What does incitement to violence mean?
What does target practice mean?
Okay, so what does target practice mean?
You tell me.
Well, I mean, do you know what target practice is?
I know what it
Yeah.
means. What you wrote it. So what did you mean by target practice?
So what I did, and I was proven correct. What I was doing was saying, if you read the manifesto, have you read the manifesto? Mm-hmm. You have. Okay, I can do a pop quiz very soon about that. But if you've read the manifesto, you'll realize what he was saying is that these are the first people who are going to attack mosques, and they're going to be first in a series of such attacks, like Dylan Roof did. So by me saying target practice, I'm making the propositional claim this is not the last time an attack will happen.
So
And
is that
since then,
incitement?
and another attack has happened,
So
and my
it's an
statements have been
incitement?
vindicated.
No, it's pointing out the facts, the
Correct.
truth.
Yeah.
So you're not justifying the New Zealand attack.
I'm not justifying the use of attack.
Are you justifying
the violence,
Something that just
it?
the
inevitably
violence was
happened.
illegal.
It's inevitable.
Was it immoral?
It's inevitable.
Morality is, I don't know, define morality.
Why is it inevitable?
Well, why do you think?
No, I don't know. That's what I'm asking you. Why do you say it's inevitable?
Wouldn't you agree it's inevitable that intervention in the Middle East results in Muslim terrorism?
No. We're talking about New Zealand.
I
You
know,
said
but
it's
I'm giving
inevitable.
you
Why?
a similar example, and now it's been reversed.
What's been reversed?
Well, now, because all this pressure that white people have to go through in the West.
What
where
pressures?
Laws.
What
kind of-
pressures do white people have to go through?
The fact that they're forced to live with people that they never voted to come into the first place, it's been taken out of their hands, and now they feel threatened, and it's going to be like, typical tribalism, which happens to all races, regardless if you're white, black.
There's a white existential crisis in the West right now.
Yeah,
That's why
so
Trump's in
wouldn't you
power.
agree that because of those pressures, it's inevitable that you're going to get some loons that are going to
Explain that again. I didn't quite get what you said about the pressures. Just explain again, then I can decide if I agree with you or not.
All right. When you force a particular group of people to have to live with people that they might not want to, and they have no say, you can't change the law. They're going to be completely, sued if they say I want a white-only space or white-only business or whatever, and all that pressure is just going to make people feel like I have no choice but to decide to do those.
White fight.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Let me define it then. Who's the other group of people? So you said other people. Can you make it more clear to the camera?
It's other white people that are the elites that are causing this to the working class or whatever.
Okay, so it's like a class issue, like not a race issue. Is that what you mean by the other people? Or
It's race as well.
Well, yeah, but the race is secondary. The elites use other minorities to have the lower classes fight amongst themselves rather than because at least they're distracted from the real enemy.
Okay, cool. All right, cool.
But to answer your question, so go check out Mark Collette and Laura Towler's great project that just came out called We Were Never Asked, where they sent teams around England and had anonymous poll asking people what they thought about being replaced by non-native Brits. It could be white Russians, so there's an ethnic component, but they would feel the same way about white Russians replacing them. 70% of people said they would never ask and were against it.
Like imagine if millions of English people moved
Aborigines,
into Japan, and the Japanese were getting under pressure and whatnot, and one was to say, "Oh, Japanese are going to go on a mass shooting of white people," and he's not saying that because it's a threat. He's just claiming he's like putting down a obvious fundamental reason of tribalism and why people.
In group preference.
Can I say, do you sympathise then in some ways with the motives of these mass shooters that may be based in their, say, indigenous countries that may be, frustrated or feel sort of a grievance towards a mass immigration and decide to, do a madness and shoot people? Would you sympathise with that?
I can understand it.
Okay.
I mean,
you can understand it.
yeah.
Can I answer that also?
I can understand why Muslims would be on a terrorist attack. Doesn't mean I have to empathise with them.
Oh, so you don't empathise with you don't empathise with this?
No.
Why?
It's understand. It's,
Loss of life.
it's understanding.
So you don't empathise with loss of life? With loss of life, you don't empathise with it?
Well, lots of life is happening all the time. Yeah, you'll empathise, but when you hear it all the time, you can become a bit immune to it.
Oh, immune to it.
Yeah, I'm immune to hearing victims of white grooming gangs. I hear it all the time, and it no longer hits me anymore.
All right, let me reverse the question then, if I may. So if it was reversed, right? Say, because we've already painted the scenario. If it was immigrants coming to the country and a white man had decided to shoot them up, you could understand that.
Yeah.
What if it was Brits abroad in Japan and a Japanese?
Perfectly understand. Yeah.
You would understand that as well.
Japanese position.
Okay, cool.
but it doesn't make any
you know how
difference
English
here.
are awful in Spain. You know, they just like you create litter or just drink. And
Can I-
throw
I
up.
just
But
wanna-
can I say one thing? Let me say one thing about
blame a
the...
Spanish
Before you
person
say
for
something,
shooting
I just
English
wanna,
people
when you
that
say you
way.
understand, I just want to go deeper into that. When you say you understand, do you say that you could understand, sort of, you could put yourself in his shoes and feel like, yeah, I kind of agree with why he's done that, or like, could you just define what you mean by understand? Because I don't know. Like, I don't know. There's a grey area of you saying you agree with it or you don't agree. with it.
I'm sure everyone's gone for that moment where they just wish they could go on a killing spree. It's only for a brief set of time, but in that moment.
And what you do with it.
Yeah.
So when Liz asked me, and he asked us about the New Zealand Manifesto, I doubt he's read it, but I've read it 3 times. About 75% of it aligns with the manifesto of Trump Party's general agreement. It's pretty mainstream conservative stuff, immigration, integration. He wasn't a white supremacist. He wasn't even a racial supremacist. He was a racial separatist. He'd been around the world, he'd seen other cultures, what they were like. He wanted his own to be his own. What he couldn't do and what he didn't do was be able to control his impulse not to act. So his answer is his frustration. We see that with many young white males as we pipeline them up towards white consciousness.
Ralph, will
we
you
see them
condemn him?
frustrated.
Will you
huh?
condemn him?
Why would I condemn or condone anything? Do you condemn what happened in 1527? You don't know what happened, right? So the absurdity, I leave that right now.
Tell me what happened and I might condemn it.
Okay, I will in a minute. So if you look at New Zealand's
Are you
manifesto,
condemn a terrorist
I'm answering this guy's
Are you
question.
going to condemn a terrorist attack?
But let me answer
against
this question
Muslims?
before, and then you get to the heckling in a second. So if you look at the New Zealand manifesto, right, that he
should
brought
not-
up, so a lot of those
should
points would align with things like anti-immigration positions, concerns about immigration, reactions to Islamization and attack. And what he did, which was wrong with Dylan Rufus, he decided to take upon himself
Uncle
to use a
Patel, do you
political...
condemn it? That's what we just want to know. You're
I
just
don't
going in circles.
know. My answer is I will never condemn or condone anything. Condemn or condone anything that someone else asks me to. I don't give you the right to ask me to.
You promoted it as target practice. That is even less than a condemning.
pointed out
That's
a fact.
Pointed out as a
to
fact.
me, that's an incitement to
No,
violence.
he
To
pointed
you
out.
it
He
is,
pointed
but you
out
should
a
take it up with the
truth.
Crown Prosecution Service, and I doubt they'll agree with you. But if
I-
you sincerely
I
believe it so,
predict, Ralph,
I get to
I
go to
predict-
prevent, refer me to prevent, and the CPS.
Just
and we'll
like
give you
I,
that.
well,
We're giving you
just
not
like
the
I-
Crown Prosecution
just like
Service.
just like I predicted with Max that he would end up in prison, where the far right now have nothing to do with him, and he's just left to rot in prison for 12 months. Red Cap Boy, everybody.
Do you feel bad
I
for that?
predict you will be up in court on hate speech.
Okay. So I can see,
years.
yeah, but I can
That's
see
not
how.
incitement.
No, but I can see like you look like a soothsayer, like a hippie who predicts things and stuff and reads tea leaves. I can see that.
Ralph,
But anyway, back to the serious conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see,
Heckling aside. Go on, Leon, you are really drilling me here.
to try and get about the
Nice work.
situation where we can have open and honest dialogue about sensitive issues.
Race, yeah.
Yeah. You said, I don't know, is it that you want to see people saying nigger and paki freely, like just for the sake of it? I don't know.
I want for people's self-consciousness to rise so they can see the context in which the word is being used, as opposed to allowing the left wing to use it to keep minorities and everyone else on their left-wing progressive plantation. I want them to be able to see that there are two worlds.
Give me a
For them,
practical-
I'm not black, so it doesn't make a difference of black. I'm brown, so I can be offensive. I mean, God knows I get enough insults all day. Backy, all that nonsense.
I know
I don't
that.
see any
They call
great
you
fight
Uncle
from the
Patel.
left or my right
Give-
to
give
the
me-
brown
give me a-
person.
give me
I
a,
don't see the left
scenario.
rising up for me, right?
Paint an
Sorry,
environment like that the general man's gonna go through, where it's acceptable for people to call people nigger, paki, these things like that.
I don't think it's acceptable to be rude. But so, for example, do you think the word nigger used in a rap song is wrong?
Or by some white
I
bitch.
think it's wrong.
Or by white people rapping? I go, yeah, my nigger this, I'm going to cap you nigger, in a song nigger cap. Do you think that's also, I mean, because you're accusing me of the word nigger.
Accusing you?
No, accusing me of saying the word might be. I'm not accusing you.
No,
Right, yeah.
no, you've admitted to saying it in a intentionally derogatory manner before.
Correct. So in a free speech world.
I've asked you like why you should.
Oh, because that's quite easy. So I always treat people with respect. If I don't get the respect, if someone doesn't disrespect me, they don't get to define the parameters of my response.
Basically, I'm saying.
Right? So if you insult me, I can insult you however I like.
Basically, what I'm saying is that, to a degree, I agree that we need to desensitize words. But
Yeah.
how we're going to go about doing that is where we probably got some.
Correct. I have an idea for 2020, which I'm going to be running and testing.
Because like I said, I've come from an environment where back in the day, people used to say nigger because they're frustrated against black people. They don't
Yeah.
like black people.
Yeah.
Strange, like it used to happen to me.
Yeah, of course.
We just
yeah.
start fighting because not because they're saying nigger, because
They can't express their feelings and they can't
they're trying to
negotiate.
provoke a response.
But they can't negotiate the violence that they feel inside them. They have no way of entertaining a dialogue. Back to my original thing, what I was saying, they have no way to have the dialogue where the words reduce the violence. When they can't control it, they might break into violence, for example, because they're having the control, the weak impulse control. But ultimately, the evolutionary success would be to escape that acts of violence. So the only way out to peace is by moving up the ability to control your weak impulse and use words to violence. That is the holy ground for all of us.
How you think you're going to bring it about though? That's what I'm saying.
Practice.
Practice.
I mean,
Give me an example.
So, for example, I want people to be able to speak freely and not be stigmatized for using racial
Say
language.
speak freely. Give me a specific
The
example.
left has always controlled language.
They have.
You know, what things used to be so normal to say have now become really taboo. So
The
why
left
can it
have
be
always
reversed?
controlled language. Like
For the
give,
last,
give
since
examples
60s.
of figures that have controlled language.
Oh, easy. So, gender pronouns.
Well, the word racism for starters.
Word
That's a
racism,
left
Tiger, you like this one?
adaptation.
Okay. Who define racism? Who from the left define
Word, use
racism?
this word, nigger, free speech.
I think it was came from. Did it start?
Yeah, bro, go ahead, go join in, man.
You say the left controls the narrative, particularly when we're talking about
Yeah,
the N-word.
they build these new terms, these new words.
So when we're talking about the N-word, right, you use an example of rappers using the N-word. From what I understand it, the rappers were trying to, I guess, reclaim this word, which had historically been derogatory, right? Meaning that they were trying to kind of like make it more kind of relatable to each other, not for anyone else to use. So that's them recapturing it. So what puts you in a position where you're eligible to use that? Are you of
Because they don't own the word.
Are you of African
No, they
American
don't own the
descent?
word. That's-
Are you of African American
No,
descent?
what gives you my
Wicked.
right
So
to-
you're not using it in. You're not using it. One second. You're not using it in the paradigm that they're using it.
Correct.
Right. So you're comparing a completely different like paradigm or framework to your framework, which is the nationalistic kind of like olden way of derogatizing or dehumanizing someone, and then comparing it to the light-hearted humor of rappers who refer to each other in a light-hearted way in order to reclaim that word.
Okay,
So,
so-
they're not comparable for a first. They're not
So is there a
comparable.
question? You keep talking because you have 4 questions in there. So
I have a question. I have a question that I can sum into one instead of 4.
So let me try it this way. When you say the black rappers control the word to use by themselves,
I never
where does
said
my
that.
authority
I never
come?
said that.
So where does my authority come to use that word? You don't give me the authority of which words to use. I give that authority to myself.
Okay, so wicked.
You are not positioned to give me the
Okay,
words,
wicked.
right?
So you don't give yourself any authority, right?
I
If
do.
the police and the state decide tomorrow that word is illegal, your authority is nondescript. It's
I'm happy that- I'm happy to take it up the
non-consequential.
state. But you're not the
So
state and neither am I.
this idea of giving yourself power in terms of saying X, Y, and Z word, no, it's what the state allows you to do.
No.
If the police here decide that the use of that word, just as demonstrated with Tan when he came to that park, the use of that word is problematic and would cause civil unrest.
Problematic
You would
is a left-wing term.
You would be, yeah, it's a really good left-wing term as well. You would be removed from the park. So when
Okay.
you're talking about the power that you ascribe yourself
Yeah,
to
I'll tell you why you're
say
wrong.
this word,
I'll tell you why you're wrong
well,
quickly.
I haven't finished. I
Yeah,
haven't
but you
finished.
have to make it
I haven't
shorter.
finished.
I'm not sure I want to hear
haven't
long
finished.
dialogue.
My populace and my kind of like audience has a little bit longer attention span, so
Okay,
I
yeah.
can actually go on. But please
Yeah, but I'm not your
answer the
audience,
question.
yeah.
Answer the question.
Yeah.
Answer the question.
So let me answer your question this way. So when you say the authority of the state, you're correct. But here's why you're wrong. Because it's secondary. The state only reacts to me having first said the word. The state cannot prevent me using the word. They can react to me using the word.
I do.
So no, you're wrong. I am free to use the word.
No.
And then that's called
You're conflating
consequent. Hang on, I didn't interrupt you.
But
I
you're
didn't
conflating
interrupt
freedom
you.
with power.
I didn't interrupt you. So when you say that's wrong, that's just structurally wrong in political theory. Either used to use a word like go fire in a theatre, the state have not muzzled me physically, and then the state will use its powers act as a consequence reacting to my word. If you believe, or the CPS believes some use of my words is illegal, I hope Her Majesty's Crown Prosecution Service immediately step up to their task.
Okay, laughably.
Can I just say
laughably-
quickly,
Just
quick?
2 seconds. Laughably, you're conflating freedom with power. The power would be the ability to say something and not feel the repercussions or the consequences.
That's your
after.
definition.
That's power. No, that is the definition of power.
Your definition.
You've restructured it for
Good
some reason
afternoon, sir.
and conflated it with freedom.
God bless you,
Go
my
on.
child.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say about that point where you said that it's reactionary and they can't prevent you from saying that. Well, if I'm correct, right, Tan used the word nigger and he got criminalized for it, and he was actually sent to jail. So you know, it's not really. So he was locked
You got
up.
sent to jail for any use of
So
word.
he was arrested.
I know Tam.
He was arrested. So in a way, they are preventing you from saying it. So they're
trying to.
in some ways taking away
That's what we're talking about.
taking
The
away
left-
your authority.
Yeah, this lesson. But deep down, what is the problem deeper down? Let's not be shallow about this. Deeper down, since the 60s, the 5 pillars of the left: racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, now Islamophobia, used to paint
about
this
economical
narrative
freedom?
of equalitarianism. If I say something against you, race is racism. Something against a woman, sexism. We on the right reject out of hand as absurd and will not entertain the narrative that says you accusing me of the word racism is some moral legitimacy I give you.
Okay,
I
so-
refuse your legitimacy.
So here's the thing. When you define what leftists define as left
Yes.
in your narrow spectrum, I can understand why it's hard for
considering
you.
having quite a wide
I can
spectrum.
understand why it's hard for you to understand certain narratives. I can understand that. But right now, you just conflated two things that are not comparable, right? And I've just brought you the reason as to why that's not comparable. You can't answer that. You can't
You
answer
think
that.
language isn't
I
power?
already did.
Say that again.
You think language isn't power?
Say that again.
The use of language isn't power.
What does that have to do with the statement right now?
No, it does, but yeah.
So again, the two comparables that you conflated, right? You can't compare them.
I didn't.
Two rappers calling each other the N-words in comparison to yourself using it in a derogatory term. Non-comparable. 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 Non-comparable.
You're just saying it's not comparable. One of my best friends is Swedish, and I call him my schoolmaker all the time. He's got white hair, bro.
And you know what as well, right, Ralph, right? If you're trying to break the narrative, right, and redefine racism, you know, like this is it started again. This process it started before as well, where people evolutionary. It started before where people decided I was going to define racism, and perhaps you know they in their minds felt that they had good intentions, right? But that didn't quite trickle down to the bottom. So even though your intentions in your perspective may not be bad, poor
You know
intentions,
why?
it may not be poor intentions.
why?
It might trickle down, and you know,
That's a great question.
as Leon said, you know, it can perpetuate violence.
Man, you keep stumbling upon the great question. That's a great question, because if you look at the etymology of racism, you see when it came to the 30s and it was a quiet etymology. When we had civil rights in the 60s, you had the liberal whites fighting for racism, fighting on the behalf of blacks and minorities.
Yeah, sure.
And that happened till about the 80s, until you see the first infiltration of the Marxist left and the progressive left, where then they take racism, redefine it, power plus privilege, and now the pendulum is swinging all the way back right, where we're going to take that racism structure and move it to race realism. We're going to take what you call racism, move it to race realism, and we're going to re-entertain those discussions. Because the liberals meant well, but you couldn't change the race realism of people who are genuinely racist. There are people who hate black people.
There's still people that are racist.
There's still people who hate black people.
Even with that definition, even if with that definition you have objection to.
Do you believe genuinely that they share the similar interests as you, or is it as simple?
I know a lot of people and they have a spectrum of responses, but I'll tell you this, there are people who genuinely hate black people.
Yeah,
Right? Now, they're currently still hate black people. The fact that the left have muzzled them with the word does not stop them hating black people. Right? So when the pendulum swung from the liberal 60s for racism, it makes it much worse, because they're not allowed a vehicle to express it so they can negotiate it out. Because they're told you can't, so they're not going to tell you I hate you, nigga, because they can't say it, but they're feeling in their
How do you know
heart.
they're racist then? But you're saying that these people are
They're feeling,
racist.
yeah, genuinely.
How do you know what's in their heart?
Because I talk to them. Yeah. Boom. Yeah. Right. So you know how they feel. And that's how you negotiate the progress. Because the big shout is, yeah.
So you took.
Mainstream media with a professional.
No way, it's rolling. Media. No editing, no editing.
Using all the mass monetization for foreign holidays in Zanzibar. Mass media.
My channel's demonetized. No money on
Corrupt
Siri.
mass media.
So quick question. I just wanted to ask.
Can I just finish?
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Right. Ralph. Yeah, so you said that these people are racist, right? And you know that they're racist, right?
Absolutely,
but you still want to change the definition, and you know, and make it widespread into the way that people, the way that you see it, right?
Right, okay, so because
But if you know that they're racist, why do you want to make it worse? Do you understand?
well,
It's
we can look at my meta motivation.
Because for my belief, it's like the people are already racist. The next stage is violence. So that's what you want to take it to. That's what you want to take it.
No. My motivations, I get to my meta motivations later. But what is the difference between the left and right in this story context? The left generally believe that you can explain society by abstractions downwards. right? Everything is a construct. The right believe that we can explain society bottom up by everything comes from nature. What we have in this racism and racist and nigger word like that is a pendulum swinging, going, there are genuine white people, brown people. There are genuine brown people who hate black people. But what you're doing is you're preventing their speech expressing that, so they can't negotiate that. What you want is, what is the resolution? The resolution must be negotiation or violence.
But what's the negotiation?
You're doing it.
I'm saying, so when you repress the negotiation,
What's the
you're
negotiation?
allowing a
Technically, the first step should be to allow everybody to say nigger. Do you think that would escalate or decrease the
I believe it would be like letting the steam off the kettle. Let me give you a story that's personal, Leon. My father immigrated to this country in the 60s. He's darker than this guy over here, my dad. He moved to a small Scottish fishing village, and he's immediately met with racist abuse. And my mother was going to go on a tirade.
just verbal?
Yeah, verbal, 1960s. Imagine a small Scottish fishing village, darker than you, my father, right? And my mother was going to go on the war path. My father said, no, let them express it. Let them bring it out. I am a stranger that they fear, don't like, and hate. And through that negotiation, either they accept me or they don't. A few years later, he's down the Labour car, on the boats, in the football games, because that expression allowed them to negotiate knowing him. Now, when you have a white guy who wanders around going, I never talk to black guys, I fucking hate those niggas, right? He wanders around, and he has nothing, it's inside him. He has no way to negotiate that, because the left is saying, you can't even stop here. You're racist, stop here, you can't say this thought. There's no negotiation. So you have a force that is in opposition, right?
But how are they stopping it?
This is exactly what I want to point out.
And this is the narrative of the right.
This is one of the biggest fallacies of the right. You keep talking about the left as if it's this massive political identity that actually does anything about people saying the N-word, whether that's white or not. We have videos of Tucker Carlson saying the worst egregious shit. We have videos now and recordings of Richard Spencer saying the worst egregious shit. People before them who have preceded them have said worse stuff. Nothing has resulted because of it. So when you're talking about the left stopping X, Y, and Z, can you give me any actual examples of where the left has acted as a political identity or any kind of enforcing establishment to stop people saying the word?
Okay, so if you went to the HR department tomorrow, if you went to the media tomorrow, if you went to the academia and said the word nigger, what do you think the consequence would be?
What would be the consequence? An investigation into it.
Okay, so you have immediately put up a social boundary barrier saying even the threat of being able to say what I think has been stopped.
So do
you think that man has not thought that thought in his head because he said you can't do it?
Man has thought a lot of things.
So 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
Man has thought violence,
seconds,
but he
2
doesn't
seconds.
act on it, you know?
2 seconds.
Okay, well, that's it.
Human resources is the left political entity that you're bringing forth.
Correct.
As
HR
something that
departments are
pushes forward.
Correct. Oh God, yeah. So I've worked in like large corporations where HR departments are, Jamie in schools, I'm sure the same. Yeah, and anyway, you got any HR department of any large organization,
So, human resources.
LGBTQ, pro racism, sexism.
Even in the Catholic school, there's boys allowed to be in a girls' uniform.
The boy who's allowed to be in a girl's
Good thing we
uniform.
have Speaker's Corner.
So what happens to a black
Catholic
person, right, that says the N-word to another black person and they're brought to human
what we
resources?
like.
What happens?
It's just considered completely usual time of phrase.
No, it isn't. They're taken out of the job because they're seen inconsistent with the policies of the job or the actual conduct of the job.
My best friend's Swedish friend, I call him my snow nigger for years. You remember me?
Anyway, it's a zero tolerance policy. regardless.
That's the correct use of the word.
Say that again?
He's a fucking snow. Look at him. He's got blue on his right.
Okay, so where's the human resources in rap? Where are the human resources?
I can talk about khakis, right? Khaki.
But you're sorry, but you're conflating rap. You're conflating rap and hip hop with the working class. You're conflating that.
No, not
like
at all.
Don't punch a corpse.
Anyone who wants
human
to say
resources.
that they're
One
black,
second.
they can go back and
Human
forth, say that all the
resources,
time.
from what I know, is within the professional sector. Yes.
Right, sure.
So how are you conflating rap and hip hop with the professional sector?
You can check out documentaries. Just recently, I saw documentaries about there was a fellow, a producer, an black American producer. The N-word is used quite a lot through that documentary. Like black people talking to other black people
About black people.
But once again, you are using hip hop and you're using an entertainment industry that doesn't really have. We're talking about on a professional setting. If you go to a one second, because if we're talking about entertainment, if we're talking about entertainment, we have a culture in which entertainment has casually allowed the rape of women, the abuse of women, entertainment, the absolute derogatory use of blackface, etc. Right? Within
Justin
these
Trudeau.
industries,
Justin Trudeau.
nothing has happened to them. So when you're using the entertainment industry as an example, you completely.
No, I don't think the casting couch is rigged.
So that
I
again?
don't think the casting couch is rigged.
Well, when someone
Culture.
is kind of like, I guess, under
The
duress.
woman wants it.
Under
If
duress.
she as long as she can get that good role, then
Hashtag
you know,
Me Too
Jamie,
is
that's
she'll
a
do
hoax.
anything.
Jamie, that's pretty fucked up.
She'll do anything to get that.
Fuck
Jamie, that's
hashtag Me
pretty
Too.
fucked up.
No. It's in women's biological nature
To be raped.
No. To use their sexual market value in order to get resources.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
That's a big statement you made.
if a
Ah, it's
culture,
fucking on the money.
What's that?
Very big statement.
If a culture,
I think a lot of women have
if
issues
a
with what you
culture
said.
pushes out alcohol, if a culture pushes out drugs, if a culture makes it hard for people of a working class to actually gain some kind of social mobility, right?
Did Harvey Weinstein create the culture?
Say that again.
Did Harvey Weinstein create the culture?
Did he perpetuate it?
I hope
Well,
so.
everyone perpetuated, both the women and the men.
I agree, but at the same time, does
Lots
that
of
make it
young
right?
girls, when willing, looking for
Right,
money
so
and
he's
fame.
he's in a situation where this is how the
Yeah, I
chess
thought
game
you'd be
goes.
back
You
for
can't
another
change
one.
the rules
I
of
had
the
a
chess game.
feeling.
So let me get it straight. Just
Yeah,
because
go
for some
ahead.
reason we seem to have derailed. I don't want to get back to the question of the N-word, right? You're making it clear that the rape of women in entertainment industries, right, is permissible because there's an agreed on
I've been
culture.
specific on the casting couch, but yeah.
One second. It's agreeable that certain people give up their freedoms, give up their consent, give up all of these things,
And we read
thus
that
endangering little girls, women, and young boys to rape. You're saying that it's permissible
No.
because there's a culture there.
No. Well, if we're talking about pedophilia, that's a different thing. But,
No, we're talking about just rape in general, regardless if it's a girl, if it's a young person or an old
Well,
person.
because on the alimonies of these celebrities who are now no longer have their sexy looks in order to get money, they have to now cry, "Oh, I was raped by Harvey Weinstein," because even though there's no proof of it, and
The majority of the girls that came out for the Me Too movement are still within their prime age. They're not in their 50s, they're not in their 60s, they're not in their 40s, and most of the times actresses' shell life tends to be up 40 upwards.
right. But
So-
how do you know they're being genuine?
So that again,
How do you know they're being genuine?
if I'm putting my rational glasses on, I don't. How do you know that they're being disingenuous? Because you're the only one that's asserted that these women, for some reason, have
I don't
gone
know,
looking for that
but I
culture.
would still want to give Harvey Weinstein a fair trial.
So that again.
I would still want Harvey Weinstein to have a fair
But
trial.
you've already put yourself in the position, right, of supporting the fact that these women probably went seeking this. You've already stated that, but I've literally just conceded that I have no evidence on the other side. But
Yeah.
you seem to be of the mindset that the women were looking for it. Where do you get that from?
Well, we agree that sports stars, get sperm jacked, right?
I agree.
Right. So why isn't it unreasonable to say that women who want to get the fame and glamour will literally throw themselves at these producers in order to get the parts? Like, oh, who's that blonde girl who got a big role in Shakespeare in Love? Because she opened her legs for Harvey Weinstein in order to get that, and she got a fucking Oscar,
But that,
And then she loses her looks later on, and then joins into the Me Too
But
movement.
that doesn't take away from the fact that, again, this is the abuse of women. And then on top of that, the whole point is that you're trying to prevent a culture, right, that is, I guess, consistent in perpetuating that women's values are based on their bodies. Whether or not a couple of people fall into that and perpetuate that and being women, how does that permit it for the rest of us?
I don't know how to view that. I mean, because
Put it this way. Put it this way. There were slavers, right, or slaves.
Yeah.
Who sold out their own slave fellowing, right, to get a better position in the household.
Yep.
How does that permit slavery if he then says, oh, you know what, the master treated me fine? How does that permit slavery?
Any system would have those issues because there's always going to be a hierarchy.
But the point is, it doesn't permit the deeper abuses and the deeper issues. It doesn't permit it. They're not excuses for as to why these systems exist.
But if there's so many different systems that work on the same fundamental values, that in order to climb up the hierarchy, then people are going to use whatever means in order to do that, whether it's their intelligence, whether it's their good looks.
But there's rules in place to make sure that people don't do that. So putting someone under duress in terms of like, you will get this career X, Y, and Z. if you do this X, Y, and Z for me. One, that's already discriminatory because not all men can do that already, right? So it's discriminatory practice. But furthermore as well, it has nothing to do with the actual career. Like a woman being able to open her legs, as you put it, or, you know, do X, Y, and Z. Do X, Y, and Z sexually has nothing to do with whether or not she can perform on camera or not.
Right. It's really competitive, and you know.
But that does not permit abuse and rape. That does not permit it. Competition, regardless, that does not permit abuse and rape. Neither does competitive societies, you know, permit slavery.
Right. But
So-
how do you fully stop slavery?
Say that again.
Well, how do you fully stop slavery in a system where everyone's about their individual freedom?
That's a completely different subject. If you want to go into that subject, we can start a new video.
Oh, but yeah.
if you're going to ask me how can you stop people, I guess, going into industries and saying that, you know, offering themselves or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You
And
can
then
make
I
rules,
understand
you
there
can
are
make
people
rules.
who are legit victims out of that, but in the end of the day,
Do you?
yeah.
I mean, you literally just said
No.
a couple of women go seeking for it when I questioned on
Exactly.
whether or not.
And then there's also the victims who just wanted to be actors and, you know, are then in a situation where they weren't exactly asking for it. But, you know, it's a mixed bag of those different
I mean,
types, and we
it's a
cannot say that, oh, it's mostly the women who are victims and only
But no
some.
one's saying either or other. But I think the only person that's taken like a predestined point of view or, you know, a stance beforehand is yourself in saying that certain women were looking for it. And the question is, you don't know whether or not the person offered it first or the woman offered it first. Neither of us know that.
Right.
So I guess one thing that's really problematic is the fact that you take the automatic stance that the woman all of a sudden is the one who presented herself and said, you know, if you give me this role, X, Y, and Z. We don't know that.
Okay.
We don't know that. So that's pretty problematic. And then you kind of like start to diminish any kind of credentials that legitimate victims would have in situations where someone puts them under duress to sleep with them if they want a job.
Yeah.
So do you not see the problematic nature of that?
Yeah, of course, you know, human nature is inevitably fucked, you know, but, you know, again, you have to view it as it being a mixed bag, and, you know, like how do you fully, can you fully stop a certain thing from happening without becoming a authoritarian dictatorship?
But I don't think it's authoritarian to have already in positioned rules that do say that you shouldn't really be putting up sex as, you know, some kind of incentive for someone to give you a job. I'm pretty sure that's not something that's authoritarian. I think that's just normal standards.
So can you stop a landlord for having this particular hot woman skipping her rent because he gets a shag out of it?
Without a doubt.
Really?
Without a doubt, you can.
Really?
Of course you can. Why do you think things are electronically kind of like, I guess, via the banks, right? The banks. The bank is a great system because now we can electronically try, like, I guess, watch our transactions, right? So rent is a monthly thing that comes out of your paycheck. It's a consistent payment that comes out of your paycheck. If there is an irregular kind of like coming out of paychecks in terms of rent, etc., right? If someone was really adamant in watching whether or not abuses of power were done, those things could be flagged up. There are multiple ways in our new technological society to spot whenever there are red flags. So in terms of like, how would you do that? There's so many practical ways.
Okay.
And then there's the question of why are the payments inconsistent? How is she, you know, if the payments are inconsistent, and why is it coming from this bank account 1 month and then this other bank account 1 month? There's so many questions that can be asked.
Okay, but if the landlord values the sex as much as her getting that rent, you know, it's just like, you know, he can like make a completely separate account to make it out that the money is still coming in, even though she has not paid anything. You know.
Let's just say for argument's sake, he sends the money into her account. Yeah. I mean, even then, like, I'm not saying that, you know, the system would be that scrutinizing, right? It would be that scrutinizing that it would look at every single little transaction and so on. But even now, when I get a payment that's a bit off, my Monzo or my bank account basically flags it up and says, this doesn't look like a familiar transaction that you would do, right? So let's just say he sends the money into her account and then she sends it back into his account, etc., right?
Yep.
he's already put down as the person to receive the money. Do you not think that the system would flag up the fact that this person who's set to receive money is sending money into someone who is set to receive money from? Do you not think that would be a red flag? And an inconsistency if the algorithm was there to spot whether or not the money is coming from the person?
Yeah, well, it depends what sort of service that they're providing, you know.
I think you're reaching a bit much. You're reaching a bit much.
Yeah, maybe.
You're reaching a bit much.
Like, prostitution's been the oldest profession in ever, you know.
It's true, but prostitution is very different to being kind of like, I guess, coerced into a career sexually. Completely different. So, you know, sex work and free consensual sex work is completely different to you'll get a job.
But
You coming back at all?
Yeah, but like I said, like there's always going to be people who are better looking, people who are stronger, people who are smarter, and inevitably they're going to climb the hierarchy and you know use the best of their skill set or the lottery they got. You know.
But then ultimately, if someone's good at murder, then they can just do that.
Yeah.
To kill off their competition.
Right, and they'll get away with it as long as they can. Obviously, you know, get away with it. Like, we have no idea of how many billionaires or corporatists or politicians have gotten away with pedophilia or killing.
But that's all again.
And I don't accept that. But is it any different to what happened in feudal times? You know, is it something that we can really escape from fully? You know.
Well, quite heavily, yes. I'd say a lot of it is a lot less predominant now. Particularly considering everything is either CCTV'd, observed, or electronically kind of like, tracked. Like, we have so many ways to prove whether or not someone has pretty much been inconsistent with our conduct of law or morality. So, you know, feudal times, like you were talking about, a bit different because if someone goes missing, there's not much of a system there or an infrastructure in place to notice that one, this person hasn't turned up to work, two, this person, they didn't have the kind of resources and stuff in feudal times. Whereas now, getting away with murder is probably a lot harder than it used to be. A lot harder.
Oh yeah.
So, in terms of like just answering the question, for me personally, I don't
really. The smart murderers get away with it, you know.
But a bit of a grim world. But just back on the question, just generally, because again, it's just gone off and Ralph's run off as usual. A left identity or a left kind of like bubble that actually stops people from supposedly using certain words like the N-word, making fun of people of LGBT communities, stuff like that. Like, where does this happen? Because from the most that I've grown up, I've been exposed to this kind of behavior. Other people have been exposed to this kind of behavior. And most of the times, it's just an experience shared. It's not a process of, oh, what happened to them after? You know, did you get them prosecuted or whatever? No, it's just a natural situation in which we've accepted, and a lot of people accept, that this is something that happened. So when you say the left stops people from saying X, Y, and Z, like, how do you mean? Physically or mentally?
They control the institutions, politicians, the educational system.
We have a conservative government in the UK, which is the Tories.
They're hardly conservative. What are they conserving?
The Tories.
What are they conserving?
The Tories.
Yeah, what are they conserving?
They've taken...
They have given in to almost every demand that the left has thrown at them.
They've pretty much cut so much funding to public sectors, the police, the NHS, schools.
Yeah,
let's talk about...
we're so in debt and we need to pay back our debt.
But again, this is just conservative narrative. Like, the idea of... You're saying that we need to pay into things by cuts.
Imagine if we had no debt, why would we...
Why not just ask people to fund the system more? Why not just ask people to pay more taxes?
Well, even the working class?
Of course.
All right, so you want to go...
Why not?
You want to go like proper Scandinavia?
Well, if we're going to complain about systems in our infrastructure, why are we not paying into
I have no problem with paying taxes. It's just people are going to riot in the streets.
But again, we have conservative government over here. We have conservative government leading the supposed free world and the leading power of the world right now, America. We have a massive uprising in terms of right-wing narratives and so on, which are based on conservative values. How can you tell me that the left run institutions? Which elements... What institutions could you point to me that say that?
Well, what institutions advocate for alt-right things?
Say that again?
What institutions advocate for alt-right agendas?
What institutions advocate for
alt-right agendas? Do you know any alt-right billionaires or companies like that?
Did we not just have a bill against abortion passed in America in a day and age where we understand and agree that women have freedom to the autonomy of their own bodies?
Well, that's more of a Christian thing. Like,
Not really. That is a classically conservative narrative and classically conservative value, pro-life.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think the alt-right will really care about abortion, you know.
Really?
Dude, you know.
I mean, we're talking about conservatism here. We're not even talking
there's
about the alt-right.
There's the milk coast conservative, which is like progressive but still try to maintain a Christian
But Trump isn't
value.
alt-right though. Trump is just a
No.
conservative.
You know, he's not alt-right.
Yeah, but he's just a conservative. So
Yeah, he's just
you know,
conservative. But I'm saying, like, the conservatives, it's like having a battle. If you focus only on defence, then you're going to get harassed and by the enemy, who's always going to be on the attack, and you're always having to react to their moves rather than ever attacking. So the conservatives don't ever attack the left.
Conservatives have been everything in attack. I'll give you an example.
Right.
When you say attack, right, it's almost the idea that someone is trying to come and take something from you.
Yeah.
Not really. Women's rights and women's freedoms taking nothing from anyone. That's women's opportunity and
Really?
that's women's freedom.
So all these alimony laws and the family court system, I think, isn't just humongously biased to the husband or the male.
Well, again, if you're talking about like family laws and stuff, these are mostly reactions to what used to be patriarchal rule. I don't know what that has to do with leftist narratives.
Well, because there's the argument that Karl Marx said that you had to destroy the family in order to create.
Well, that's
real
not what he
change.
said. That's not what he said. He said that you have to reshape or restructure. Restructure the
You
family.
destroyed the nuclear family. I mean, you know.
You restructure the family unit is basically what he's saying. He's saying that you can't concentrate on the capital of family because it dehumanizes every individual within the family and puts them down, reduces them to their numerical value. That's what Marx taught. Marx said that you should value human beings for human beings. So when you talk about supposedly Marx wanting to destroy the nuclear family, I find it kind of ironic because he's trying to push a narrative in which you value people not based on what they can bring into your family economically or valuably, right? More just because they are part of your inner collective. So, like,
but surely, if you have children, you see that as an investment for when you retire and you have someone to look after you and inherit your property.
Not necessarily, because a child should never be necessarily indebted to you at all. He does not make.
Though you brought them into this world alive.
He or she does not make the choice to come into this world.
Yeah, true. But
They do not make the choices to which family they are born into. So the responsibility and the onus is all on the two individuals that then decide to create a family.
Well, right, but
Yes, there is a moral obligation to look after the elderly and stuff like that, but that pulls down to the freedom of the child born. Like, that is a freedom whether or not they choose to. There is no kind of like how many animal species do you see caring for the elderly?
well, they're not much elderly because they're often eaten by the predators.
Fair enough, but again, how many animal species do you see just catering to anything that isn't their immediate family? And then when I say immediate family, I mean onwards, not back.
Alright, welcome back to the park. We say long time no see.
Yo, Mo B!
12 months band or 6 months? 6 months, yeah? You cool, yeah?
Yeah, I'm good, bro. See you around.
Sorry, what rephrase that?
Yeah, we were saying, what animal species, right, if we're talking like Marxist theory, what animal species prioritizes or even at all allocates any resources backwards as opposed to forwards? We're the only things on this planet that do that.
I think chimps are known to share tools. You know.
Not with the older species, not with like the older generations.
Really?
With the forward generations probably, but not with the older generations.
Alright. But this brings back to, like, when we talk about bonobos, you know, they are a weaker species to the chimp cousins because the women are mating with weaker men, which means it creates weaker generations of people.
But again, that comes back to a conversation about what you value as strength. And in society,
Yeah, and
especially this contemporary society,
Yeah.
what we value as strength back when does not compare to what we value as strength now.
Yeah.
Especially, say, in ancient Rome, ancient Greece, what they consider strength, when we can see this from all the statues, is not what we consider strength in modern day. Elon Musk, what's the Facebook guy, Mark Zuckerberg,
Yeah.
etc. These are not, the Leonidases of back when. These aren't the Spartacus of back when. They're our Spartacus now. They are our Leonidas now. This is what we call strength. So our opinion of what we call strength has always been constantly shifting, depending on what God has the means. And
But would you accept there's a norm that goes out in history that at least as its basic roots, can always like be adaptable to any environment. Whilst strength, like we said here, only exists because of the excess resources we have and the certain infrastructure, and I don't know how long this can go on.
It's true, but how long can you live in a Stone Age survivalist environment?
Almost
progress?
inevitably. Well, progress.
Really?
Yeah. Well, like I said,
human history hasn't shown that human beings will build societies wherever they go.
Right. But
the fact that we're here in this...
But they get to a certain success and then they're going to go complete collapse and then the cycle returns again.
I mean, again, that's... again, going
we
back
become
to...
a victim of our own success,
But going back to...
Nature finds a way.
Just going back to, again, the political identity of the left and supposedly what these people who enforce X, Y, and Z, we still haven't provided a valid or consistent kind of like force.
Well, all I'm saying is, in their minds, they think this is progressive, this is healthy and whatnot, but they're not understanding that these things have already existed in the past and inevitably results in the whole society collapsing.
Again,
and the default position will always be a very hard patriarchy, tribal.
Again, that doesn't have anything to do with what we were originally talking about in terms of the left enforcing supposedly people not being allowed to say the N-word or people not allowed to say X, Y, and Z against people who don't prioritize heteronormative kind of narratives.
Why would you want a white thug to have the power of just saying one word to get you so rattled up that it might result in
the
murder?
question is, it's not necessarily the razzling up, is it? That's not what people fear. When people talk about like the using of the N-word and the P-word and whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It's the idea of creating a consensus in which it's normal and okay to dehumanize people. Because it's never really the kind of like beginnings that ultimately lead to X, Y, and Z, right? The Nazi Party very slowly kind of grinded its way through propaganda.
Yeah, it's exactly the same technique, you know.
So the question is, why would you want to encourage that form of behavior? And then even if let's just say, even if our society supposedly goes against encouraging that form of behavior, which it does to an extent, where are the supposed enforcers that you're claiming to stop you from doing so?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the question was for Ralph anyway, so you've just kind of like proxily kind of like, you're a proxy Ralph today apparently, so...
No, I don't know how to answer that question, you know.
Well, there is none. There is no establishment. There is no establishment. Otherwise, we wouldn't have free speech as, you know, a talking point now. We wouldn't have it. So, to my detriment and to most people's detriment, I'd say to everyone's detriment, most people are allowed to get away with saying the most foulest stuff. And it's true. Like, Steve was calling out a gentleman earlier, obviously, and he's someone who kind of like speaks out apparently against, with Anjem Choudhury and is part of that narrative. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, our laws are in such a way that he's allowed to literally dance on the edge of what is not terrorism, what isn't. And that's where Steve kind of like ran away, because it's like, I asked him, well, what's he convicted of? If he's not convicted of anything, then unfortunately he's not really a terrorist. And that's the unfortunate nature. He has to do something that extreme. But I'm asking, why do we want to keep it at that limit? Why do we not want to maybe want to bring it back to a point where it's like, if someone is even indulging in this narrative, it's already a clear sign that this person should probably be under watch and probably be someone that, you know, the judicial system pays close attention to. That would be my answer, personally.
Yeah, but if only we had enough resources to spy on anyone who had that slight opinion, you know.
Well, we do.
Do we?
We have more than enough resources to allocate people's data in terms of like where they want to spend their money. Throw adverts out and blah blah.
I'm pretty sure the guy who did the Manchester bomb attack was under surveillance.
I think so. But he was another one dancing on the edge.
Yeah, but again, we got like a humongous amount of people who are on that potential edge where they could do something. And there's no way we can react to it in time.
But the problem is, like, when you have that edge, what I'm trying to say is, when you have that edge where literally, like, the point of being called a terrorist is where you actually do a terrorist act, right? My thing would be, much earlier than that, where you engage in terroristic narratives. So narratives that are seeking dehumanization of certain people. And within that narrative of the gentleman over there, Andrew Crowder and stuff, animated as it is, there is a level of this is kuffar, this is not, right? There's an us, there's a them, right? And it's a thing of painting us as the more kind of like predominantly preferred and them as not. And we can do without them. And they also, this is where the language of dispensability comes around, because they believe that kuffars are dispensable, right? So then that dehumanizes people to the point where people think, well, I'm justified in killing them. So I would go way further than just allowing people to dance online. I would say people, if they indulge within that extremist narrative, need a further look into it. But I'm pretty consistent on that, and this is why I call people like Steve out. I'm consistent on whether you're Muslim or not. I will call you out. So.
Oh yeah. No, there's always that grey area where you don't know.
You know. Anyway, I gotta go. I actually was gonna go now because I was gonna go way earlier, but
Right.
I heard Ralph talking about the left, so I was like.
Come take over everything from your melody.
Come, man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to IT.
But he's wearing a hat. Made in China.
And I don't
America, make America great.
I'm working.
But you,
I pay the taxes.
you look far more ridiculous than him. You look far more ridiculous.
This is what you look like.
When you are incapable of even understanding that making people poorer doesn't make them richer. What making people poorer means it makes you richer. That's what you forgot to say, isn't it? It makes you richer. And it makes your child poorer. Yes, that's right. Having slaves is making society better.